Next time you're on Coruscant and shopping for a gift for Life Day or Day of Days, might I suggest you stop by Luthen Rail's Galactic Antiquities and Objects of Interest. It's a fantastic gallery in the shopping district where you could get just about everything you need. Howdy, I'm Jeff Goldsmith, and this is the Q&A. My agenda is simple. Each week I plan to bring you in-depth insights into the creative process of storytelling. And folks, that's right, stop by Luthen Rails. They've got everything for you, including today's guest, Tony Gilroy, the showrunner, creator, and co-writer of Andor, and he is coming to you live from the radio room in the back of Luthen's gallery, and I am very pleased to have Tony back in the podcast because Andor Season 2 is absolutely amazing. It is going live today on Disney+, so I cannot wait for you to see it. Basically, they are dropping 3 episodes a week for the next 4 weeks, and we have Tony with us today to discuss the first 3 episodes. As usual, we are going to start off spoiler free, and then we are going to make a very clear spoiler announcement and get into the spoilers for you. So don't worry, if you haven't seen all 3 episodes yet, all you got to do is press pause when we make that spoiler announcement. The only non-spoiler thing I could tell you is when Tony Gilroy shoots, he does not miss. He has assembled a crack team, and they have totally stuck the landing for Andor Season 2. Every episode is just great, and each episode gets better than the last as the tensions continue to build, all leading to the film Rogue One, which, as you can imagine, it does really well. Without a doubt, Tony was forthcoming about his creative process and what it took to get Andor Season 2 made, so I know you'll dig this episode. And speaking of things to dig, folks, if you've never read Backstory Magazine, I hope you check it out on a desktop or laptop or via our iPad app, Backstory, over at backstory.net. There's an entire free issue waiting for you to test drive if you've never read us before. And if you like what you see, and I hope that you do, you could use discount code SAVE5 to save $5 off a 1-year subscription. We do a lot of really fun things in Backstory. We publish screenplays in their entirety. We have interviews with today's greatest writers and directors, and we do current cinema, TV, and of course retros as well. So there is a lot waiting for you over there, and I really hope you check us out. As always, we continue to update every single issue, even after we publish it, with new content, so we're always changing, and that's the fun of a digital magazine. But look, it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners and Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and my YouTube watchers of the Backstory Magazine YouTube page, which is where you could see us do all these interviews on Zoom, except today, of course. We're using the logo today because Tony's camera was not really available for this interview. But 99% of these other interviews, you could actually see us talking on the Backstory Magazine YouTube page. And look, after you test drive us, I just want to thank you again for considering continuing to support independent entertainment journalism by becoming a subscriber. But now, without any further ado, let's jump right into our interview with creator, showrunner, and co-writer Tony Gilroy about Andor Season 2, Episodes 1 through 3. Tony, it's good to chat with you again. I'm loving what I've seen of Andor Season 2.
Thanks, man. It's great to be back.
And I'm going to talk about it later. It's a crazy thing being a journalist sometimes because, I've seen it all, but I can't talk to anybody about it. And I want to talk to all my friends about it because this is a show that is worth talking about. So I'm glad to be able to talk to you about it. And I know we're pressed for time, so I'm going to start right at the beginning. Like, was there anything else in the time that has passed, just to look back at Season 1, that you wanted to try, that you just didn't have the time or the budget or the resources for in Season 1 before we get into Season 2? Because I think that's a good leaping off point going from 1 to 2.
There were things that we had to change in Season 1 because of COVID. Money wasn't really a dominant issue in the making of the first season, but obviously COVID was shaping everything. So, like, what's an example? I mean, Danny did all the first drafts on the Aldani. That was supposed to be 10,000 people showing up in that valley. It's supposed to be sort of like a Glastonbury or something, this huge festival. And that had all kinds of knock-on effects for how the heist worked and what they did. COVID came and they're like, well, we'd be lucky to get 150 people up there. It demanded a total rethink of how many things were going to operate. Honestly, we've been blessed all the way through. I don't want to jinx myself going forward, but I found problem solving, things that seem like they're going to be total crises, have led all through my career, but specifically in this show, to really really upgrades. Making Aldani dead enders and making it the end of the line gave a sadness to it that we hadn't anticipated. There was nothing in season one that we had been thwarted from doing that I was banking for the future. No.
Of course, the only other thing I remember talking about was a little more for the prison sequence in season one, if you had a little more time and money, but the way it worked out was still perfect. And I want to get to season two. You, of course, put together another great writing room. And I just want you to talk through how you like to operate your writing room and what you learned from season one's writing room that helped you with season two. And the writing room I'm talking about would be whenever you got together with Tom Bissell, Dan Gilroy, your good old brother, and of course, Bo Willimon, because it seems like it was that core team that was writing on season two, of course, along with yourself.
We replicated the process that we did on season one, and it came about from COVID sort of saving the show and stopping everything from going off a cliff. It would have been a huge public disaster had we continued the way we were going. I mean, the naivete and ignorance with which we started this, that I did, certainly. The idea I was going to direct 3 episodes in the spring, and the scripts were coming in, and I was going to rewrite everybody's script and my own script and get that done. And how that was going to work was just really naive. When COVID hit, a bunch of things had a knock-on effect. I mean, one, I'm pinned down in a box in the States. I can't go back. I'm on Zoom. I'm in a cockpit. I have nothing to do but write and rewrite. We're building a structure in Pinewood with Zana using the Atris and using multiple meetings every day. And the efficiency of that, what I learned from starting with my own episodes going, oh my God, well, first of all, they're not good enough. Second of all, there's production things that are coming up. Our system, I think, I watched the David Chase thing about The Sopranos, and I've watched, John Wells's. I've seen how other people do their shows. We had a very, very different, as far as I know, process, which is that, the writing starts with me and Luke Hull, the production designer, before anybody else. He's the closest collaborator that I have really creatively on the show. I start with him for a long time before anybody else gets involved.
Interesting.
We're making the worlds, and here's a plan. And in season 2, it's like, okay, we're going to do Gorman, we're going to do Coruscant, we're going to do the Senate, we're going to do Mina Rao, we're going to do Chandrila. We have to have all kinds of conversations about that, and all kinds of work has to be done. And then for season 2, as you know, we have a very strange structure in that we're jumping a year between each block of 3 episodes, and there's this huge negative space in between. So it's a pretty radical idea, and one that seems like it's going to have all kinds of problems associated. So I sketched the top and the tail, the first scene and the last scene of each block as proof of concept. This is where we'll come in. This is where we'll go out 3 days later. Does this work? And oh my God, that started to work. So I have that. I have all the work that we've done with Luke and the preliminary work of building, the starter work of building the new planets. And then we go into the room, and all the squishy stuff, all the stuff that's missing, all the interstitial beats that need to be put under pressure, we put them on the table. Luke is in the room. Zana Wallenberg, who's the producer, is in the room. They're watching the show being literally built in front of them. They're watching, ideas pop up and be shot down immediately. So, things that don't work, they've seen all the stuff that doesn't work. They've seen the development of the ideas that do work. They understand the genesis and provenance of every idea. When there's a question, an economic question, oh my God, we can't afford to do that. Don't go down that line. Or if you're going to go to Gorman and we're going to go this big, we got to get 5 episodes out of it. We got to justify it. I think we did 5 days the first time. I think we did 6 days this time. Same hotel room. It is very aggressive and fast moving. And Bo was like such a classic showrunner on House of Cards. So he's got a whiteboard. So he likes to stand at the whiteboard. So he stands up and he does the whiteboard. And we have a couple secretaries writing everything that's said. We're taping it because it's moving really fast. And we just go at it really hard. And
so are you saying, sorry to interrupt, are you saying you broke your whole second season in 6 days in a writing session with the group?
Definitely.
Wow.
I'm coming in with quite a bit of material. I'm coming in with stops and starts. I know where we're going, and then we divvy them up, assign the blocks. If someone really has their hand up and they're desperate to do one, I can't remember exactly, but it always seems pretty natural about who gets what. Like, we had the whole Senate sequence and Mon Mothma, and that just seemed so fitted for Bo and House of Cards and the political negotiating that was going to go into that. I really wanted Danny, I think, to do that third block because it had a lot of a certain kind of action that I know that, Bo and Tom don't have that experience. I I needed that in there. Tom came in. He was much more into Star Wars than anybody else. I thought, we get to the last block and we're going to really want to feather into Rogue, and we need somebody who's going to really keep us honest there and be the most knowledgeable about
Right.
that. I'd already probably written the first three. I might have had them already sketched out, and we pull apart. They go back. They write as fast as they can, and they turn in a draft. We make notes and they turn in another draft, and I don't know, maybe we get a polish out of them. They're very expensive. They're very busy. I kind of have what I need from them. We can budget off what they've done. We can cast off of it. They're not perfect by any means, but they're getting us there. The boat is launched.
How long did you have for those scripts to come in? Like how long, so 6 days to break it. How long was everybody given to go do their scripts?
6 weeks. I don't know. Something.
Okay, that's good.
I don't know. I don't really know. Tom Bissell was the best kid in school. So his came in first. He's
Right.
like, he's got his hand up. He wants to, but he's the one who had to do the most rewriting. So like the scripts come in. And then as we did in season 1, our system is take those scripts and beat the living shit out of them in every way possible. They all get just a cruel, cruel daily rewrite for months and months and months. They all get put through all the departments and all the design work and all of the casting and all of the directors come on. And our system, weirdly, is to get like an absolutely dead bang blueprint of the show that we've done, serious page turns on. Like I'll do the first page turn with all the HODs.
Define what you mean when you say page turn. You mean rewrite?
Literally go through every single page of the script, every line, every prop, every problem that might come up, every efficiency that we could build into it, everything that might bite us in the ass or weather cover or anything that's in there that might come up. And then if people need to sidebar and reconvene, it's months of prep. I mean, we prep it like the directors really get prep like a movie, it's really serious prep. And then the second page turn is kind of a scrum with me and the AD, and we kind of scrum through it. But the final page turn that we do, if it's going well, I shouldn't have to say a word. I'm there listening, and it's the AD and the director running through it's their show now, and they're doing that. So that script is the result of months and months and months of, I don't want to minimize what the guys are doing. There's no show if I don't have them. Through all this process, if something changes radically or something excites me that we didn't think about, I have personal relationships with, I call them on the phone, and, so we're on the phone all the time. I'm like, hey man, this came up, or we can't afford to do this, but I'm going to do this. Is that cool with you? Or like, holy shit, I rewrote this thing and do you want to take a look at it? And, so we're on the phone. They're available to me as a backboard. But then all of this whole mad, super precise, anal, obsessive prep is all in service of trying to get a document that the director and the actors can take to the set, and we never put a writer on set. I very, very almost never go to set. I don't want anybody sitting on these directors. I want that to be a completely free space for them to play, but they don't have to show up in the morning, worry about, rewrites coming in, or they don't have to worry about that the scene is squishy, or they don't have to worry about there's questions to be answered. They know where the protein is in every scene. They know what they're supposed to do. But, I want them to TV directors, they don't really get to start it. They sort of get to finish it, but then we really end up finishing it all. And so you want to have them have a place where they really have ownership, and we're hiring really talented people, and you want to let them swing. And that's what we do. And that process, it requires massive prep. The byproduct of it is we never shot anything we didn't use. We think we shot one scene in season 1 that we didn't use. We never shot anything in season 2 we didn't use. Not one scene.
What you're really talking about, what most people refer to it as, is the Hitchcockian method, in which people know that, he sometimes would go to sleep on his sets between takes because the last thing he wanted was surprises. He did as much prep as he possibly could. All of his crew heads were bought in, on board, and they knew what they were doing when it was boots on the beach. That makes sense, and I think that's a great way to go. We are going to get into spoilers now. So for these first 3 episodes, anybody out there that has not yet started watching Andor season 2 on Disney Plus, the first 3 episodes are out as of this podcast. Please go watch them, press pause, come back, because we're talking about spoilers. It's so fascinating that you said you start with Luke, because the way that you open, the concept that you have for opening of episode 1 of season 2 was to take us inside a TIE fighter. It's a very familiar object, but going inside a TIE interceptor the way that we are, in this episode and really seeing it and getting a small sense of how it works, but it being foreign to us, just like it is to Cassian, just a great way to go. It was almost fetishistic, but it matches the heist tone that you're going for. When did that idea come alive? Because it was beautiful.
The dirty secret on the opening is like, I spent a lot of time thinking about how to start this and then coming up with how we do it. And it's born of a couple things. One was kind of like a fuck you to anybody who said that we started slow. It was like, oh, really? Well, let me show you what we could do. So part of it's like that. I always had that opening thing with it's like stage lights coming on. Bang, the lights come on. Bang, there's a TIE fighter. Bang, it's Star Wars, And it's like, okay, here we are. We're back. There's this very pastoral, eloquent, touching speech that he gives this young woman who's about to like change her life and join the rebellion. And that lets me show what he's been doing all year. He's a leader now. You can tell he's done this before. You can tell that he's been on these missions before. You can tell how eloquent and deeply felt his commitment is. At the same time, there's a little bit of manipulation in there. A lot of pressure to put music on all that. I was like, no, 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 no. I want naysayers to be like saying, look there he goes again. He's doing this thing again. And then we pull the floor out from under you and go at it. And comically so in some ways. That's really where I started. Yeah. Okay.
And it looked absolutely beautiful. And, as we're going through this, we also cut to Minarua. We see the farming community, and we also find Bix, Brasso, and Will hiding out. And it's interesting because, Will, he had a small role in the first season. He is the kid that threw the bomb at the revolution and at the climax of at the end of the first season. And it was good to see him back and to see him start to grow here and try and find his way in the world, lost from it on this other planet. When did you realize you were going to do that with Will, in which you were going to give him more to do in this season?
At the end of season one, I mean, that's a universal long-term show experience where you really have the opportunity to see who rises and what people are capable of and go for things that you think are strong. I mean, look at all the people in the show, that everyone from Genevieve to Elizabeth. I mean, I never knew Genevieve was in Rogue. I don't know how good she is. I have to have her. And it's like, oh my God, look what she can do. Right. Elizabeth Dulau could be just like Luthen's Sorcerer's Apprentice, but oh my God, she can do anything. And so Mo got pretty good as we went along. And I was like, I can't leave him behind. They're definitely going to kill him. So let's put him on the truck. And I remember calling Mo during a couple times in the off season while we're putting together and really trying to feel him out, his confidence about going forward. What was really cool wasn't just that he's a very, very good actor and a sneaky good actor, but, he's aging in the right direction.
Yeah.
Some of my characters are aging in the wrong direction.
Sure. One interesting thing is character goals are always interesting to track. And it's funny. The last time that I saw you in person was literally at the event at the DGA, and it turned out to be either the night before or 2 days before the writer's strike.
Yep.
And people were still talking about season one. And one of, Cassian's goals in season one was the reunification with his sister, who he had only heard was maybe working somewhere associated with a bordello. And so much has gone on in his life, even in season one, that I was curious, was that ever something that you wanted to talk about in season two? Because as we're in these first 3 episodes, it is interesting for all he's doing, and he is busy. He's in the fire, but there's been no talk of his sister so far. And it's just interesting to see how character goals could change.
I think in the very, very beginning, when I was developing season one, I know for a fact that I sketched, sketching all kinds of things. I sketched a very melodramatic, version of the reunification with the sister and whatever.
Yeah.
But what I realized by the time we got to the end of season one, I realized that, and I think this is a really good, writing idea, her absence and the unresolved quality of that is so much more valuable to me in forming Cassian's character, because people will see, I don't want to spoil anything, he's constantly, and sometimes ill-advisedly so, returning to save people. There's a savior complex that's baked into him that is really easy to understand from this absence from his childhood. So her utility as unresolved, and we all have things that are unresolved in our life, so it's natural, but her utility is way more important to me as an unresolved absence in his life than she ever would be as some cheesy, coincidental or some cheesy reunification.
Right. If she joined the team,
Whatever, yeah, or
that could be droll as well. Like that makes
yeah,
sense.
man. I'm already going to do that a couple places. I have some places where I'm doing some reunions, and I God, the idea of having some cheesy reunion with
Yeah.
that, just it wasn't worth it.
You totally tapped into George Lucas's original vision of Star Wars A New Hope and just the series in general of like the concept of Saturday matinee with cliffhangers, especially with Cassian on the jungle planet and this group of fractured rebels that he's stuck with who have taken him prisoner. When he escapes, you pull the rug out from everybody because as he escapes in the TIE Interceptor, leaving them all behind, you see the tips of the pyramids. And these look damn close and sure seem to be the Masisi pyramids, which would make that Yavin 4 the fourth
Sure.
moon of Yavin Prime as to where this is all taken place. When did that idea come about in which, we see in Rogue One, the movie, that Cassian is on Yavin 4, but putting him here in the series I thought was really cool, especially with this weird fractured group that in our minds we know are going to grow into something else later on. When did that idea come about? Because it was a great reveal for that episode.
We have to have a planet that he's going to. There has to be a place for all that to take place. And to have the Maya Pay Brigade and have them be so stupid and so disorganized and so messy was an answer to this wonderful leadership speech he had just given to this woman about the rebellion and this wonderful, clean, you're joining this incredible church of,
Right.
I'm like, man, no, the rebellion is a mess. So I wanted to get to that right away. Luke and I'm like, okay, I need a planet. He's got to go someplace. And where's he going to go? And should we invent a planet? It's like, you know what? I call Pablo and I go, what's the status of Yavin at this point? He goes, no one's been there. And I go, oh my God, there's an element of Zelig to Cassian Andor. Not that he's a shapeshifter, but that he's always where something is happening,
Yeah.
which is a little bit part of this destiny issue that we're going to. It just was like, wow, what fun to pull away and realize, my God, here's another place he's at the beginning of. He's everywhere, he is absolutely everywhere that this rebellion is taking place.
It was a beautiful touch. I absolutely loved seeing it. And, it's interesting to see as the plot is unfolding in this first 3 episodes because you have the secret meeting where Krennic is talking about Gorman.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they have an Imperial energy plan that he wants to basically gouge mine the planet for, as he explains in these first 3 episodes. And, being a journalist, there's this loneliness I have where I can't talk to anybody about this. So I'm running to Wikipedia to try and look this up, and you're talking about calcite. And I just want people to know that on this day of these episodes being released, calcite is listed with 1 sentence on Wikipedia, and it's listed as, quote, a mineral mined for its use in mixing cement. And it's just kind of funny because I'm sure that will change over time because they have big plans, but it's funny to see Wikipedia a little behind the times at the moment.
And there's nothing about Gorman. They don't know anything about Gorman.
They know, as fans know, they've heard about the Gorman massacre, but we've never seen anything about it, and we've never had it fully explained. What in your lore led you to Gorman? Because I think for the Rebellion's early years, obviously we know in Rebels, the animated show, Mon Mothma makes a famous speech about the Gorman massacre. And what led you to choose that as kind of a pinpointed place that you're going to put in these first 3 episodes and thread throughout season 2?
Canonically, Gorman is a mess. In Star Wars Legends, there's the Tarkin landing on a bunch of people and killing them in a massacre. Many people think that's the massacre. Then there's the Gorman massacre that precipitates Mon Mothma leaving the Senate. That second one is the one on my calendar that said, okay, this is the one we're going to do. We had to do a lot of housekeeping to clean up the other part. You can see what I did later on. I won't give it away in spoilers. Part of it is, as I said, Luke is in all these meetings. Gorman, we're going to make an entire culture out of Gorman. We're going to do the massacre. We're going to build a society there, an economy there, a culture, a language, a national anthem, everything.
Yeah.
Well, we got to justify the expense. So I got to get a bunch of episodes out of it. So it's got to cover 2 blocks. So we're really going to spend time there. That first scene is modeled after the Wannsee conference that the Nazis had in the early 40s to design the final solution. They had a PowerPoint luncheon to decide how to kill 6 million people. That was was my model for that meeting. Look, I've been given a once in a lifetime opportunity to have a 1,500 page canvas to tell the story of revolution, and as best I can using, through people, through characters. And I want to be able to say everything I can possibly say that I've learned over my life of study about something I'm really interested in. Season 1, they take down Aldani. Well, that's easy. It's a bunch of indigenous people. It's a typical colonial power move of it's easy. Take down Ferrex after an insurrection. We wanted to see the empire take down something really substantial. You can't just do that with muscle. You have to use media, propaganda. You wouldn't be doing a full survey of revolution if you didn't use how power controls the narrative.
You mentioned in that meeting the Ministry of Enlightenment, and they're going to
Yep.
be doing false information.
Yep.
And what's fascinating, though, is that you took such a complicated concept of, misinformation, and you had Deirdre say that line when Krennic presses her. She boils it down to one line. He's like, "What's your real plan?" And she says, "Power alone won't do it. You need an insurgency you could count on to do the wrong thing," which says so much in one sentence. Like, was there a longer scene? I'm just curious, when you boil something like that down, did you just spend time boiling that down to one sentence, or did you start there?
I became a much better writer on this show than I had ever been. And one of the things I've learned to do on this show is speak directly. A lot of people say exactly what they think in this show. A lot of people lie, and there's a lot of subtext, and I'm certainly not trying to be any less sophisticated, but I've learned through this show that there's a lot of declarative statements in this show that are very helpful, and that's one of them. No, I think that just was like, man, I got to get this out.
It was absolutely perfect. What year were you writing these scripts? Because we're seeing people now deported from the United States, and work visas for farmers and mechanics on, Mina Rao was something that was happening in your episode. And it's very prescient, unfortunately, because it's become a part of our current reality. So what year were you writing this? Was it
like 3-4 years ago? Yeah. And also,
it was that long ago.
Yeah. And we're supposed to be out a year ago. The show was supposed to, without the strike, the show was out a year ago. And there was even a small window of opportunity where we would have come out in August or September of last year. Just it was economic. It cost too much money to push too fast to do it. So,
yeah.
So we waited. So I'm not writing with the newspaper. These issues have been around.
Unfortunately.
Sadly, this is rinse and repeat, man. It's just so I'm not psychic.
Ooh, hey, I'm jumping in really quick to remind you to check out Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net. This is our 13th year, and we couldn't have done it without you. And folks, there's a ton of great articles to see over at backstory.net, whether you look at our free blog or our free issue, or you become a subscriber and get access to all the screenplays that we've published with screenwriting interviews, director interviews, showrunner interviews, playwright interviews, comic book writer interviews. There is a ton going on over at Backstory. So look, it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners and Apple Podcasts and Spotify and my YouTube watchers of the Backstory Magazine YouTube page, which is where you could see all these Zoomcasts, except of course today's episode because Tony's camera was off, but you could see all the rest of them. It would really mean a lot to me to have you consider continuing to support independent entertainment journalism. So thanks for considering becoming a subscriber. But now let's jump right back into our interview with creator, showrunner, and co-writer Tony Gilroy as we continue discussing Andor Season 2, Episodes 1 through 3. In a show as serious as it is, one of the funniest moments I found, rather than just the rebels playing Five Hands version of Rochambeau with Roski Rules, it was literally the mother-in-law potential scene between Dedra and Cyril and Edie, his mom, in which she knows that Cyril is a bit of a mama's boy. And Dedra just puts down the law when he's out of the room and stops Eddie in her tracks. Tell us about that scene, because I had to rewind it twice. I like seeing somebody talk that way to their potential mother-in-law, that they're going to be entangled with, and just setting it straight from the beginning was hilarious.
There's nothing more fun than writing Edie. It took a long time to get her voice, and Danny started it, and then we sort sort of passed it back and forth. And then finally one day it just really clicked in, and Catherine Hunter came in. And like, once we got it, man, she's just a gas right. Look, what's really fun is that you could do this huge crescendo where is Cassian going to make it back in time to save everybody? And Mon Mothma's just put the finger on Tay Kolma, and her
Right.
daughter has completely just really just brutally upended her. She's really on her ass. And the wedding is coming to all these horrifying conclusions. And at the same time, I'm saying, you know what's just as heavy as that? Edie's visiting for lunch today. No, we want to have some fun, and
It was a
at
great
this,
scene. And again, your characters are in the present tense. We do not learn a lot about their pasts. But in that same scene, when she asks Dedra about her past, again, you nailed it in one sentence. Even using the German term, she says, I was raised in an imperial Kinderblock, and, her parents themselves were what she described as
criminals. They were just criminals. Look,
her parents were
that I
criminals.
specifically remember. I remember absolutely that wrote just like it was, and I remember sitting there going like, "Oh my God, I don't need anything more than this. This is like."
I mean, it's crazy.
I mean, no, that's instant backstory, and the way she delivers it is so cool because her childhood is so impoverished. It doesn't deserve more than a story like that. It's really like that's first cut. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
first
mean that's
draft.
amazing because when you could pull that off that fast, like it's really great. I
Yeah,
guess the way that episode 3 ends is really with the wedding, as you said. This is part of Mon Mothma's arc, which is
yep,
realizing that her daughter is kind of embracing weird traditional imperial ways, doesn't have a problem with an arranged marriage the way that Mon
yeah.
Mothma did, and she kind of needs to let loose. And what you're really starting with her daughter's wedding is her forfeiture and her realization that she's no longer going to lead a normal life. Something that she already knew, but she's now starting to see as all these elements are coming together in front of her. Everything about Tay, but especially her daughter going into a child marriage, an arranged marriage, which Mon admits to her in this great moment that the two have together that she wishes she could get out of. And it's great. She says, like, you could leave now. It'll be brave. It'll be tough at first. My mother was drunk the night of my wedding, and I always resented her for it, but I understand it better now. And you just have this great line where her daughter looks at her and says, I wish you were drunk. It cracks Mon pretty hard. And it's a great moment. Tell us about the wedding being this big set piece of these first 3 episodes and leading up to that realization for her that she's kind of lost her daughter who's going more of an imperial route than a rebel route.
As we described before, that we're going to do these year-long gaps, and I was like, wow, if I come back, a lot of weddings, I can have a wedding take place over 3 days, and like maybe that's the defining organizing principle of these blocks. And then, all right, so I have 3 days of the wedding, and I was going to a lot of weddings. My son's friends were getting married. Of all the characters in the show, I think her character has the hardest journey because she just does everything observed. People are watching her all the time. Everything that happens for her is under glass. And the wedding is just such a classic place to just pack the musket on her. And we've been away for a year, and you're right. There's almost an element of denial as we start. Oh, the wedding's happening, and she's worrying about parking places and worrying about
Right.
this and that. And then, oh my God, Luthen is there. Why? Holy crap. Here's the infection of her denial is interrupted by his presence. And in addition to that, as you said, she's really in despair about her daughter's return to orthodoxy, the orthodoxy that her and her cousin, Val, have escaped from. And it's an opportunity to learn all about where she comes from, all about essentially what must have been her first rebellion, which was to leave this place and sort of make a different kind of life. And now her childhood friend, who seemed like such a savior and such an ally in season 1, Tay Kolma, is starting to do a total Fredo on her here at the wedding, man. Right? And like, I love the idea, we've all had that experience in our life of, what happened to her? What happened to him? Tay Kolma's come off the rails. Luthen Rail is there, and like, thank God he's there because he can see it. By the end of the weekend, her daughter has just completely exiled, as you described, and she has to tacitly sign on for the execution, the murder of her childhood friend. And the moment that you described, the moment where later where the daughter comes back at her and just crushes her, is Genevieve's and Mon Mothma's essence all in one shot. You get to see her put the mask back on in that moment. That is her. That's the most graphic example of something that she's doing through the entire show. You watch her just like within a moment go, "Oh my God." She takes the blow and the mask comes back on.
Well, I got to
And
commend you again for when the mask comes back on. It isn't just a face mask comes back on. Like literally, she adjusts her jewelry,
yep,
and her daughter is standing in front of her, and she is a leader, and she just takes command. And Mon says, "No, you're behind me,"
exactly,
and
man.
like
She,
puts her
yep.
daughter in her place. And
And it's her character for anybody who forgot from season one or anybody who needs to be reminded. There it is. This is what we're doing. And that's why these year-long gaps work.
I mean, and it was a great moment because, as you said about the orthodoxy, she's basically saying, "Oh, you want to play orthodoxy? I'm your parent. So
Exactly.
get in line behind me and do what I say." The funniest takeaway that I had from it was, people have always used the throne room music from episode 4 along with the end credits to sometimes walk down the aisle. Could you ever see a Disney theme park or resort having an official Chandrila wedding? Because you really mapped out that ceremony. Like people know exactly what to say and what to do. I just can't decide if I think it would be a bad thing.
Nick and I always posited, like, who's going to be the first Star Wars fan who does the funeral from Ferrex? Does the funeral music at their funeral? Like,
Yeah.
when is that going to happen? Yeah, no, I know. We thought about that. We had this music. We had this Niamo song that we kind of decided in the first season was a galactic hit. It's playing instrumentally in the brothel when he comes in. It's playing a little bit in Mon Mothma's embassy. People didn't really pick up on that. It's playing in the background. It was my idea. Took a lot of convincing. Not everybody was on board with it. I said, I want to use that. I want to remix the shit out of this and make it really badass. I want to play it at the wedding, and I want to have that be the wraparound music for the whole crescendo for 203. And I want to try that. And people are like, I don't know. And it would be hard to express how much work went into that because you're trying to make it invisible in the end. You're trying to make it disappear. I was vindicated in the end because it's a writing show. I guess one thing I would sort of instructive and not something I really realized at the time. I'm realizing it now as we're sort of analyzing everything. Mon Mothma then, she's basically tacitly agreed to the assassination of her childhood friend.
Yeah.
The rebellion has infected her weekend, her wedding. Her daughter is completely, ruined her emotional inner life. She hits that dance floor with that music and she has a couple shots, and there isn't anybody in that room who has any idea of how deranged she is at that moment, or how people look at her and she's dancing with abandon and they might think, oh my God, the mother of the bride is just going for it. Only you who are watching the show, only the audience and her are the only two people in the room who know what's really going on. There's a pact you make with the audience when that happens. There's a binding that happens that's really interesting. And I mean, I wasn't aware of it, what I'm saying right now when I was doing it. I'm aware of it now after the fact, but that's the result of it. And, she's dancing to not scream. She's dancing. It's the chaos in her.
I mean, the music's perfect. It's a great crescendo for the end of the episode. It also says something to these people of privilege that are there. I mean, it almost seems like a gaudy party at Mar-a-Lago, to an extent. Like everybody just dancing completely unaware of what's going on outside the universe around them because it just doesn't affect them. They're folks of privilege. It's interesting that you split things up into 12 episodes, and I just want to know if you know your act breaks, as geekily as that sounds. Would you say these first 3 are acts 1A and the second 3 are acts 1B, and then it's just 2 and 3 as the final 2? Or is it some other complicated formula? Or was that not in your mind at all?
No, I never ever think that way. I don't
Okay.
know what an inciting incident is, to be honest with you. I've just never, it's chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. I mean,
okay, no big deal. As William Goldman said, nobody knows anything. So it all works
really.
out. Like,
Yeah.
it's everybody has their own process.
Yeah.
And I just want to get the year correct again. Would you say that basically Andor season 2 was written after the strikes, or had you been writing some of it before the strike?
What do you mean? Oh no, the whole thing was written before the strike.
So the whole thing was written before the strike. Okay, because
No, I finished not by design or not by pressure or anything, but like I've said this before, but if you asked me in September of that year, what's going to be the most important thing of your year? What's going to be epic turning point for you? I would have said, oh my God, some point in the spring, March, April, I'm going to finish the last final rewrite, the last final blueprint, page turn, architectural drawing of the last episode. And at that moment, my life will completely change because I won't have to get up every morning and I won't have that on my desk. That's going to be the most epic change in 5 years. I can just do the show. Then at that point, we
Right.
can do posts and I can look at dailies and do stuff, but I won't have to write anymore. That happened to happen about 6 or 7 days before the strike happened. I left them with perfect drawings and everything. They had everything they needed to continue.
Well, in production, I'm guessing started after the strikes because when SAG joined in, like
they went a long way. No, they went a long way until SAG hit, and then they went a little bit after with equity and some problem solving and things that they could do and stand-ins
yeah,
and they did a miraculous job problem solving
and then the rest was after the strike.
and then and then in September, whenever it was resolved, then Johnny showed up in New York with the iPad and showed me 12 rough cuts of 12 episodes, and
That's great. That's awesome. And then did you do a period of reshoots?
yeah, I mean, this is also, I mean, from a writing point of view, what he showed up with was 12. They were super shaggy and temp music and all kinds of IOUs and all kinds of shaggy shit all the way through. But it was 12 episodes. I'd never seen any of them put together. But we've had this conversation on every movie I've ever been on. At a certain point where you're in the cutting room and you're like, what would you pay? I'd pay $50,000 if I could see the movie for the first time right now. Fresh eyes, you're just desperate for it. I hadn't seen anything or talked to anybody or anything for 6 months. And I'd been in a completely different headspace and on vacation and traveling and like waiting. I got to watch the show like an audience. I got to watch the 12 episodes on a run. I made 75 pages of notes of all these things of clarity. I don't understand this. And honestly, God, the most exciting 2 weeks that I had on the show were the 2 weeks where I went back to London. All 4 cutting rooms were open. Everybody was there at Hireworks. And we just ran from room to room, Johnny and I, and here, and tried this, and let's do this. And like my understanding and how I think about the audience has really changed as I've gotten older and writing, and like how the audience's energy goes. And I wanted to streamline anything that got in the way of anybody's understanding. I wanted to remove anything that was taking calories away from paying attention to what I wanted people to pay attention to and clarifying things that were not understood. And that passed, those 2 weeks of tightening up were just so exciting. And then I really identified everything we needed to get when we went back and did our targeted reshoots, and not reshoots, but our targeted finishing of the show. Yeah.
And how many weeks did you have to finish the show in production?
We had 3 weeks or a month of shooting, and I went over for the last couple, but it was so targeted and so specific, and like, we need this, we need this, we need this piece here, we need that, get this. And all the ADR, all the ADR repairs and off-camera dialogue. And I don't know if I ever would have gotten there if we made the show continuous. Like, would I have been that sharp on my notes? Would I have made all those things happen? Would Johnny and I have picked up on all that? Would we have gotten there? I don't really know.
I mean, it's really of its time, because a lot of writers I've interviewed, because of the strike, of course, they took their time off to strike against the studios and to show solidarity for each other as artists and for SAG as well.
Right.
And then when they came back with fresh eyes. I mean, I'm sure
like, really? So yeah, I mean, so that you've talked to other people who had the same experience.
Oh yeah, like because for many people, it's the first time in their careers they've had that kind of break.
I know.
And as you know, Woody Allen traditionally does a cut of his film, watches it, tweaks it, and then does a long set of reshoots. At least in his 70s and 80s movies, that's what he was like kind of famous for. And it's just a luxury that modern filmmakers haven't seemed to have, but the strike forced everyone to have it.
Hey man, people don't realize, MGM used to build in a proportion of reshoots into every shoot. And it was just de rigueur. No.
Absolutely.
So, that's pleasing to know that was our experience on it. Yeah.
I mean, look, you also had the death of Brasso, like showing that not everybody gets out alive that you want. And so that happened in that same third episode. And that was tragic. And I'm sure as we go forward into the series, it'll weigh on Will because he wasn't there for Bix when she was alone and having to fight off the Imperial officer. There was a lot going on in that third episode. And it was a great stopping point, for setting it up in these batches of 3 that were going to be released together. It's a great way to get into the season, and I really liked it. What was your toughest scene? That's my big final question for you. What was the scene that you really found yourself coming back and rewriting over and over? And
in the first block? In that
first 3 episodes, and we'll end there.
What's the toughest scene? I think the toughest thing was to convince a lot of the cast were skeptical about being able to turn Tay Colma into a problem. There was a lot of skepticism whether I could turn that character character, whether people would buy that turn. I really felt that, I mentioned Fredo before. I really felt that this was a legitimate human experience. And I've had lots of people that in my life, but not lots, but certain people in my life, you don't see them for a year. And then, my God, a year later, it's something completely different. I had to do a lot of hand-holding through that transition and probably tweaking and adjusting and buttressing and doing that. That was the most difficult idea to get through.
It's funny because, again, he was having financial problems, and you did it all in a line where he says, isn't it ironic that the rebels have put me in financial ruin? Or you said something along those lines, and it tells us everything we need to know of why he's having problems. But anyhow, look, I love what you're doing. I can't wait to talk to you again about it. Hopefully we'll catch up as the episodes continue to drop. Tony, congrats on Andor Season 2. I look forward to talking more about it.
All right, Jeff, we'll be back. Thank you, man.
And that's how the Q&A went down. Special thanks again to creator, showrunner, and co-writer Tony Gilroy for being so generous with his time and coming down to chat about Andor Season 2, Episodes 1 through 3, which you could watch right now on Disney+. And while you're surfing around online, I hope you also check out Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net or via our iPad app, Backstory. If you've never read us before, you could test drive us by reading our free issue in all those places. And if you like what you see, and I hope that you do, you could use discount coupon code SAVE5 to save $5 off a 1-year subscription. So look, it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners and Apple Podcasts and Spotify and my YouTube watchers of the Backstory Magazine YouTube page, which is where you could see all these Zoomcasts, except of course today's episode because Tony's camera was off. But you could still listen to us over there, and you could see 99% of all the other interviews over there. So look, it would really mean a lot to me to have y'all consider supporting independent entertainment journalism and my passion project. So thanks for considering becoming a subscriber. The Q&A with Jeff Goldsmith podcast is the copyright of Unlikely Films Incorporated in 2025. All rights reserved. And folks, if you want to drop me a line, you could do so at any time. You could find me on Blue Sky as Yo Goldsmith or Backstory_mag, or on Twitter as Yo Goldsmith or Backstory_mag, or on Instagram as Yo Goldsmith or Backstory_mag. Do you see a trend here? I also have a Facebook fan page, which is an easy place to find me, or if you want to go old school, you could even send me an email, backstoryletters@gmail.com. I'm Jeff Goldsmith, the publisher of Backstory Magazine and the host of the Q&A, thanking you for tuning in and telling you to stay out of trouble. Till next week.